Good evening. Welcome to this session on how to make identity and access management simple. And I promise to you that I'm going to keep this session as simple as possible. I would be taking questions at the end of the session. So you're welcome to submit your questions as I'm talking. Towards the end, there'll be ample time for me to answer all the questions that you may have. So with that, let me begin with my presentation. In order to understand what can make identity and access management simple, it's important to understand in the first place what made IAM complex. And for doing that, I need to really take you down a bit of a memory lane. In Ilantus, we have been in existence for the last 20 years, as long as the domain of identity and access has been in existence. So we pretty much know all the different generations of IAM software that came and went. And perhaps the answer on why this technology became so complex lies in what happened in the past. So I would put it as two stages. Stage one, this was the stage when a lot of entrepreneurial small companies came into existence, and they had the first bits and pieces of identity and access management. And these companies came anywhere from 1998 to 2004. Around 2004, as it always happens in our industry, since these technologies were beginning to get popular and there was some consumption beginning to develop, at least for very large organizations, the enterprise companies, the larger of the players like the IBM, Oracle, Computer Associates, as it was called in those days, they began their acquisitions. So there was a merger and acquisition phase that happened in stage one, which was essentially large companies acquiring the small entrepreneurial companies. And as it again happens in our industry, different elements of identity and access, like the web access management, the user provisioning, as it used to be called in those days, the bits and pieces of privilege access management, they all were bought out from different companies by these large guys and was offered as a full suite of products, as so-called complete solution to the customers. Obviously, this was not an integrated solution because all these products came from different technologies. They had different kinds of interfaces and user experience, and they also were based on different philosophies. So it was but natural that the implementation of these technologies was not easy. It was being claimed that it happens to be a suite of products, but in essence, under the hood, there were very different products. And so the implementation was very, very complex, and so was the support. And that began the endless circle of complexity for identity and access management. That also made the technology expensive. As we know, this led to the identity and access being a technology for the chosen few. It's interesting that in our domain, as late as 2012, 2010 and 2012, the identity and access was a product only for the chosen few. That was the first stage. And then came the stage two. That perhaps made things even more complex from a customer point of view, because this is what I would call was the stage of specialized camps. Now let's see what happens. As opposed to large organizations acquiring small companies and offering diverse products as one single suite, which could not integrate with each other and thereby made things complex. in the specialized complex camps approach, now new generation companies began coming in somewhere around 2008. And mind it, if those of you who have been associated with this space would also know that the identity governance came much later, somewhere around 2008, with the beginning of Awexa and then SailPoint. And so that was not initially a part of the identity and governance products as it is today. And so you had identity administration, which existed initially, and then there were a set of companies which brought only identity governance. So now, instead of two, there were three different products: the access management, the identity administration, and then, of course, you had the identity governance, which was beginning to emerge. And if you look at all the large players, be it Oracle, IBM, or others, CA is another, CA Broadcom, another good example. They all had three different products that were purchased at different points in time, and they were trying now to put it all together. In contrast, new companies began emerging, and they just focused on one single domain. So like SailPoint was, like in access management, we had companies emerging which just specialized in access management. There were companies which were doing work only on the identity administration and identity governance. And then, of course, you had the privilege access management, which had already emerged by that time as another very important aspect of identity and access. That was another technology being brought out by the third camp. So now, the initial stage one gave way to stage two, which essentially was the age of specialized camps, which is even continuing today to a large degree, where one vendor would offer you only a part of the solution. And that is getting more, and that got more and more entrenched over time. So with all that in the background, the state of IBM universe today IAM universe today is reflections of a disjointed and fragmented past. And more than anything else, this is what has made it more complex. More than anything else, the technology evolving over a period of time, access management being in the beginning, and then you had the identity administration followed by identity governance, made things far more very, very complex for the users. And today, if you look at the IAM universe, it pretty much looks like this. You have the older generation products who have multiple products, and these products have been brought under one umbrella from the outside, but inside they happen to be radically different technologies. And so they had their own set of complexity in how they have to be put together for the use of the customer. And then you've got the middle-aged companies, which are typically about roughly beginning to happen about, they're beginning to be about, I would say, 7 to 10 years old. If you look at Okta in that, which came in somewhere around 2012, they specialize only in access management. And then if you look at the Identity IQ product of SailPoint, that has only identity governance and administration. If you look at OneLogin, only access management. Omada, only identity governance and administration. So now there are multiple camps, and the middle-aged products very much are a reflection of that. Now let's see what else is happening. You've got a younger generation beginning to emerge, which is based on the satisfying requirements for a new set of requirements that are emerging in our space. And these guys are people like Idaptive, which recently got acquired by CyberArk. The Identity Now, which is the version on cloud for SailPoint for IGA. So now they have two products. One is the Identity Now, which is for the cloud, if you prefer to have a pure cloud product. And they have the earlier product, which is the Identity IQ, if you want an on-prem or a more versatile product. And then, of course, most of us know about Savient, which is again based on the newer technology and has become quite popular. But this also is a part of the CAMP approach in that they have only the identity governance and administration. So if you look at the IAM universe today, this chart pretty much sums it up, that you've got 3 generations of product available, but pretty much all of them have one thing in common. Either they happen to be a part of a suite, which is the multiple products from the older generation, which kind of claims to offer everything in IAM, but is all very disjointed and doesn't have anything great to offer, whether it's the user experience, a single dashboard, or the functions themselves interacting with each other. And then you've got the middle-aged and the younger guys who happen to have products which, again, happen to be only a part of the IAM technology. If you look at the trends today in the last couple of years, it continues to be around mergers and acquisitions, super specialization, as I said, CAMP's approach, and people vying for leadership positions in their separate camps or in their super specialization area. Some of the recent acquisitions, like Adaptive's acquisition by CyberArk, is a pointer towards the fact that the customers are beginning to demand that we need something simpler and we need more functionality, and we need an IAM, all the IAM features, be it access management or IGA, or privilege access management for that matter, to come from one single integrated product. In other words, what you need today and is being demanded by customers is convergence. I call it the MS Office approach to identity and access management. There are going to be, so imagine a product which has got everything that you need in identity and access. What would happen? The first thing that would happen is simplicity. Because all of it happens to be a part of the same code base, all of it happens to be one single dashboard from where if the end user or the administrator or the manager, he operates everything. No more the problems of I want to log into the application, I got to look at a single sign-on dashboard coming in from Okta or somebody. If I want to request an access, then I got to go into using another dashboard, which would come perhaps from a SailPoint or an Amada or somebody else. So a single dashboard, a single code-based product is going to deliver the ultimate simplicity. It would obviously be a comprehensive solution by the very design. It should also be flexible, because if you've got everything inside one product, it does not mean that the customer is going to pay for all of it on day one. As we know in this space, most of the customers would have an implementation staging. Some would like to begin with just identity governance. For some, identity administration is the starting point. And for a large number of customers, it's the access management, which could be the starting point. So that flexibility should be available in an MS Office for the identity and access management. It would be extremely important for such a product to be delivered in a very flexible manner. It should ideally be available in cloud because that's the preference for most of the customers. But if you really look at some of the typical highly regulated industries like the financial industry, they're still a little hesitant in the cloud model, and they would like perhaps to still continue for some more time with the on-prem kind of a model. But if you look at the access management area, cloud is very acceptable today. So there should be a choice available to the customers whether they would like to be on-prem or they would like to be in cloud. And indeed, if they happen to be they want to begin with on-prem kind of an approach, it should be possible for them in the future to lift the solution into cloud with minimal or no effort whatsoever. And that's not possible today. If you look at, as I was saying, SailPoint is a good example. It has got, if you would like to begin and you'd like to do a cloud implementation, then you got to go for one product. And tomorrow, if you're ready to move in, if you want to be in the on-prem in the beginning, you got to have one product. And then if you would like yourself to go into cloud tomorrow, then you got to change the product. So that flexibility of being available in multiple ways to launch it is not possible today. And that should be a part of the ultimate feature. There's another very important requirement that is emerging today, which is the managed services mode. So many customers are beginning to demand that the complexities of IAM are beyond our management. We would not like to deal with a multiple vendor situation where we have one vendor providing the technology, or perhaps multiple vendors because of the camp approach. Multiple vendors provide the complete IAM technology, and then there's somebody else that is hired to do the implementation. And then once that has been done, you've got somebody else to be chosen for managing the environment. So typically you're talking about at least 4 different vendors, one for access management, one for identity governance and administration, perhaps one for privilege access management, and then one implementer or maybe multiple implementers, because the same guys would not perhaps implement both privilege access management and identity governance and administration. So multiple vendors there, and then you've got somebody who's going to manage all of it. Again, it may be difficult to find a vendor who's going to be doing managed support and services for all of them. But in the ideal state, if that convergence becomes possible, then you got to have all of it being offered from one single vendor, be it the entire suite of products, which will be one product, the implementation, and the support, long-term support, managed services, what we call. So the MSP model of identity and access management is one more extremely important requirement if true convergence is to be achieved. All this is obviously going to not successful unless we are talking about a radically different total cost of ownership. As we all know, customers, most of our customers are not happy. Most of the IAM customers are not happy that the licensing and the implementation support costs are way too high. They're finding it more and more difficult to justify it, especially in difficult times of today. Large number of customers are either freezing their project selections, and those who are implementing, many of them are going on a slow gear. And as much as they would like, for a variety of reasons, IAM to be implemented, they are being forced to slow down because of the very high total cost of ownership. So that is another important requirement. Perhaps the last but not the least is any of the ideal solutions in this space has to be future-proof. The concept of identity fabric is emerging, and I'm going to talk about it a little later. I'm sure you have been hearing about it too, and you may also be having some sort of a plan to not just have a usual conventional identity and access implementation, but for it to become a part of the creation of an identity fabric, which is so important today because of the ever-increasing complexity and dynamic changes that organizations are really looking at because of a variety of reasons. The interesting part is that there has been no solution which would be the so-called MS Office for identity and access management. And this is precisely what gets delivered by what we call compact identity from Ilantus. This is a product that caters to all the requirements of convergence that we just now touched upon. At this point in time, I would like to take you into the journey of identity fabric, which is this is becoming a big game changer. If you haven't really explored the articles on the identity fabric, it is essentially a technology which would, IAM technology, it enables access for all from anywhere to any service. So mind it, we are not talking about here modules or products, we are talking about services, while integrating advanced approaches such as support for adaptive authentication, and these are just examples. There's a lot many more services that the identity fabric wise to provide. Adaptive authentication could be one of them. Auditing capabilities, comprehensive federation of services, and dynamic authorization capabilities. So let's go a little deeper into the identity fabric and see what exactly it is all about. The approach of identity fabric essentially is based on what we call an outside-in approach, which means that services can be requested by the applications, application owners, by device owners. Take the example of an IoT device. So somebody is given an IoT device, set of IoT devices to manage, and he has to put together all the security behind it, all the convenience of managing it. And therefore, if it's a complex IoT device, maybe he would like to put two-factor authentication or an adaptive authentication to access that device. And so typically in an identity fabric, the IoT device owner would go ahead and would request for the multiple two-factor authentication service. And once that is sanctioned to him, he would be very seamlessly able to consume that from the identity fabric. So that's how the fabric really operates, which is very different from today's rigid architectures of IAM, where you pick up a number of applications, you lay down a foundation of what you're going to do, and then you take perhaps years to put that together. And as new services are demanded by business, you're not in really a position to handle them effectively. As analysts say, there are certain requirements for the identity fabric. One of them is minimum number of products, preferably one. And as you saw, compact identity of Ilantus is the only product that provides or confirms to this specification. It should have a very secure and robust API management, because when you are trying to connect hundreds of services in the organization over a period of time at a very rapid pace to various services that are available from the IAM, then API management becomes an extremely important criteria. The Fabric also has to offer risk awareness of internal and external threat signals. By the way, Compact Identity would very shortly have its first risk engine, which would make it a highly risk-aware identity technology with which will be able to generate and consume both internal and external risk signals. One would be able to select policies for the risk management, and based on the policies, the risk engine of the Compact Identity would manage the risk for the organization. Risk exchange is another very, very important aspect of the identity fabric, where we are talking about IAM becoming the central point for orchestrating all the information from across different products of security, cybersecurity. So it becomes a part of the risk exchange as well. To just show you an example of how this identity fabric really operates, I'll take the example of access management. Now, access management, as we know, does offer multiple services. They are not available as a service today. They're available as modules, which are very rigid in nature. But in the identity fabric, you'll have access management delivering multiple services, which could be the dynamic multi-factor authentication. It could be the geo, time, or device context. It could be a deep web features that could be made available, or the automatic access approvals on the side of the governance and administration, which also is becoming a part of access management. So the fabric essentially would enable customers to be able to consume any of these services for any of their device, process, or application. That's how this technology is extremely different from the way IAM has operated. And the Compact Identity from Ilantus is a product which is based on the latest architecture that would also support the identity fabric concept. So in order to, if we really have to sum it up, the Compact Identity makes the convergence possible, and through that offer the simplicity that is so much needed in the industry today. Ilantus has more than 20 years of global implementation experience that has gone into Compact Identity. Till 2012, Ilantus was a services company and had the distinction of implementing various variety of IAM technologies in managing them for more than 500 customers in the US. And these included 11 of the Fortune 100 customers. So all the experience of that has been put inside Compact Identity. It is a product which is all-in-one, has a modular or incremental implementation based on whichever way the customers would like to go. It's got application connectors for something like access management, where no apps are left behind. Even the thick client or the on-prem applications can be seamlessly integrated into the access management framework. And if you have to build an IGA connector, it can be done in 1/4 of the time and cost than what's available on other technologies. It has a risk engine and risk exchange, which confirms to the future requirements of identity fabric. It's delivered through a host of global partners, the names, some of them you can see here. And it's also delivered through very high growth of local expertise across the world. The license is available on perpetual, cloud, or as a service model, and the deployment is flexible in terms of being either on-premise, public cloud, private cloud, and also as a service in the managed MSP model. At this point, I would open this session to questions. I would like to thank all of you for listening to this session. Thank you once again, and let's take questions.